All right, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce our final speaker of the day, the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. Please help me welcome the Honorable Marcel Lettre.
Hey, Ellen, how are you? It's great to see you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Ellen, very much for that introduction. And I know we're drawing to the closing parts of today's discussions. So fully recognizing that, I look forward to making a few comments and then maybe taking a few questions, and then really hope everybody's had a great day and a good afternoon to follow here with some informal discussions. I also want to thank Bruce Hoffman. I know he was out here earlier and has stepped off stage, and the team at the center. Actually, while I was backstage, the coin that he mentioned, team gave me one, so I'm excited to have one of the challenge coins from the center. And Bruce in particular mentioned that some of the watchwords on the coin involved theory and practice. And Bruce personally is a real testament to that. A few weeks ago, probably after spending a day here on campus, doing the theory, talking to students, teaching, responding to a zillion emails from folks around the world, I'm sure. He then went into practice mode by coming over and spending an evening with the Secretary of Defense in a small, off-the-record discussion about the way forward on counterterrorism. And over a couple of hours, had a discussion about what we do next and gave a few ideas to Secretary Carter. So there really is no better personification of what the center is trying to do than the director of the center himself, Bruce. So thanks, Bruce, both for your contributions here and for your contributions to those of us at the Pentagon who are working these issues on the practice side. I also want to thank Robert Cardillo, the director of NGA, and the NGA team here for taking the mantle up from John Brennan, who helped kick this off last year, and really running with what I hope is a regular series now for the Caleres conferences to talk about issues that are important to the intelligence community. And Robert, thank you for giving me a chance to be included in this. And then a particular shout out to students both from Georgetown and perhaps from other universities who are here today. I guess I would just say that, just a personal anecdote, a couple of decades ago, one of my good friends and a close colleague that I've worked with over the decades, former colleague from the Hill, worked at the Pentagon with me as well. He was in your shoes here at Georgetown, an undergrad studying political science, volunteer emergency medical technician, probably spending a little bit too much time down on M Street. Went on to law school, worked on presidential campaigns, then chose a career path into the intelligence community, worked on the Hill in intelligence oversight, on the intelligence oversight committees after 9/11, then went on to serve as the chief of staff to the CIA director at the time, Leon Panetta, where he actually helped oversee the operationalization of the bin Laden raid. Then went on to be chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense and oversaw military operations around the globe from Iraq to Afghanistan to Libya. I guess I'd say that's not a bad job for a Hoya. And it's an example, I think, of how your paths can lead from here to some pretty incredible contributions. Now, he has had some particularly incredible contributions and has set the bar pretty high. But it's a real-world example of something that I think hundreds of others have done here, which is to identify a spark and interest in serving the country in some form, serving in intelligence in particular, and then being able to actually have those opportunities to go follow it up. As we close a day that has been invested with rich thoughts and ideas about openness and transparency, trust and innovation, new ideas, it really is appropriate that it takes place at a place like Georgetown University, where trust and integrity and innovation is all part of the daily business here. We've all explored many different facets of a key theme, succeeding in the open. And in my remarks, bringing this conference to a close, I want to talk about the military dimension of succeeding in the open, particularly how important being open to innovation is to the success of the military and of defense intelligence and the defense intelligence enterprise in particular. Today, here we are embracing new ideas, demanding innovation, all with the intent to ensure that intelligence is as relevant for our national security today as it was for George Washington, who said, "There's nothing more necessary than good intelligence to frustrate a designing enemy, and nothing requires greater pains to obtain." At the Department of Defense, we are today wrestling with that same issue that plagued George Washington, ensuring that intelligence, and for that matter, all of our defense capabilities, are as relevant to protecting the nation now and in the future as they have been in the past. The Secretary of Defense, Ash Carter, and the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Bob Work, are leading this charge with strategic vision. Ash Carter has made 3 commitments in the beginning of his tenure that he continues with today. The first to the troops and their families, the second to the President to give him our best efforts to provide solutions to today's geostrategic challenges, and the third, a commitment to the future, to stay ahead of a changing world, to stay ahead of our competition, and to apply the best of technology to defending the nation. At its core, SecDef's vision is about strength through openness, openness to ideas. That's what succeeding in the open fundamentally means to the Department of Defense. It's about accepting new ideas, about innovation and investment, about diversity of talent, about advanced strategy. It means not caring where the idea originated, but rather what the idea can do for our military and our warfighter. For the most part, the Pentagon doesn't actually build things. We have to partner with industry, academia, and other government agencies to be successful. As a result, we are rethinking and reinvigorating relationships between DoD and industry and academia. Just last month, for example, the Defense Department announced, in concert with over 100 companies, including universities and labs, a $75 million investment in a new flexible hybrid electronics manufacturing innovation hub. Basically, think iPad on a flexible sheet of paper or computing power built into a t-shirt. That's flexible hybrid electronics in the future if we can achieve the right breakthroughs. And we're opening windows into other game-changing technologies: robotics, autonomous systems, visualization, biotechnology, miniaturization, advanced computing, big data analytics, and additive manufacturing, all of these really being driven by the commercial sector. But we've also got to remember that technology is a means to an end and not an end in itself. People are the critical enabler for our success. So we have to keep looking outside as well as inside for great talent. That means we're doing things like making more permeable the walls that separate government from scientists and technologists in new sectors. For instance, enabling the military services to develop lateral entry programs that allow mid-career moves into and out of the Defense Department from specialty skills that we need more of, like data scientists. Similarly, the department can benefit from a sort of reverse fellowship where we send our best and brightest, uniformed and civilian, for a period of time to work out in industry, like the Air Force's Electronic Systems Center has done through a partnership with industry since 2003. The Secretary of Defense is pushing us to be open to new ideas about strategy and operational doctrine as well. Deputy Secretary Bob Work describes this as a third offset strategy: new combinations of technologies, operational concepts, and organizational constructs to once again bolster a weakened conventional deterrence. Warfare, just like our adversaries, continues to evolve, and our strategy, our strategic thinking, must be open to new ideas as well, to see comparative advantages that will give us our edge as a nation over adversaries in the decades to come. The openness that I've described the Defense Department is seeking, an openness to new ideas that give us strategic advantage, extends to the defense intelligence enterprise as well. 8 of the 17 intelligence community organizations, DIA, NGA, NSA, NRO, the service military intelligence components, and the intelligence team supporting each combatant commander, all create a global defense intelligence enterprise with an aggregate budget of about $18 billion and a government workforce of about 110,000 military and civilians. 3 priorities drive our work in the defense intelligence enterprise: integration, operational impact, and future capability development. And openness to innovation is a key dimension of all of these and each of these. First, on integration, integration is about extending openness within the defense intelligence enterprise. The era of 17 intelligence agencies fighting with each other over turf has really gone the way of the flip phone. Networks are attacking us, and tightly integrated networks of our best and our most talented working seamlessly together are key to taking the fight to the adversary. We're doing this by changing the way we collaborate. One example of this is the work underway to transform business practices and systems. We do this to really truly knit ourselves together as a tight-knit community. In IT, for example, we're moving to a secure intelligence community cloud, the IC Information Technology Environment, or known inside the halls of the IC as ISITE, and something similar on the Pentagon side, the Joint Information Environment, JIE. These will empower that kind of collaboration with a core backbone. Another example of how we're achieving openness within is through joint duty for intelligence officers. The Goldwater-Nichols Act of 1986 made sweeping changes to the military that have formed the foundations of today's military successes. One of these was to require military officers to have tours of duty outside of their traditional career lanes as a precondition of continued promotion. This created a much more integrated, much more joint warfighting force. The same is occurring bit by bit in the intelligence community as intelligence officers serve across the IC, not just in one agency. This leads us to a future intelligence workforce that is skilled in multiple intelligence disciplines and cross-functional capabilities to handle the speed and scope of a hyper-connected, data-focused world. The second area where openness matters is in defense intelligence operations. The geostrategic challenges facing our nation, as General Stewart said in the last panel, are perhaps the most complex that many have seen in the last 5 decades. Countering ISIL, supporting Afghanistan, operationalizing the Asia-Pacific rebalance, countering Russian aggression, cyber defense, countering weapons of mass destruction. Addressing these diverse problems requires today's intelligence enterprise to be operationally relevant, and this means producing capability that the warfighters can use to succeed today. It means providing critical information to our nation's leaders to give them a decision advantage. As the military says, we need to have information that allows us to move left of bang before the attack occurs. Successfully supporting military operations within defense intelligence really requires openness to new solutions in order to do this. For example, innovative thinking spurred the development of the Air Force's remotely piloted aircraft capability about 2 decades ago. Now we maintain a diverse, unmanned intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft fleet, including the now well-known Predator and Reaper remotely piloted aircraft platforms. This fleet started with 1 aircraft, grew to 60 combat air patrols, or CAPs, this year, and in the next couple of years will grow to about 90 CAPs. And this critical capability is now not just provided by the Air Force, but also by the Army too. Succeeding operationally has also required innovation to handle sheer volumes of data quickly, and then getting valuable insights to the warfighter. Within the military services, for example, a great example is the Distributed Common Ground System, or DCGS, a system so important that the Army Head of Intelligence, the G2, has called it the Army Intelligence Analyst's weapon system, much like the tank is to a tank soldier. The Air Force is similarly working with DCGS as it evolves into a mechanism for rapidly deploying and using sensor capability and ensuring operational relevance, ultimately delivering decision advantage to our warfighters within all domains. The third area where openness matters is in developing future intelligence capabilities, where we're focused on driving innovation in 5 key investment areas: expanding global intelligence coverage, countering anti-access area denial capabilities, countering terrorism and countering proliferation with our capabilities, cyber defense, and countering insider threats. As we seek innovative ideas across these investment areas, we must look at every opportunity to leverage good ideas, from the large-scale defense system integrators to the national laboratories to the federally funded research and development centers, academic research institutions, to emergent sources of innovation. Now, the IC for years has reached out to places like Silicon Valley, including through In-Q-Tel, a venture capital player, and Sue Gordon, who's been part of making sure this conference comes together, has had a long history with In-Q-Tel and its successes. This year, the Defense Department has added to In-Q-Tel's investments to pursue some additional military needs and requirements. And we've also established a full-time presence in Silicon Valley called the Defense Innovation Unit Experimental, DIUX, to ensure that the Pentagon continues to benefit from working more closely with technology companies, whether it's in robotics, big data analytics, cyber defense, or other needs. In my own office, we're sponsoring a small innovation activity called the Cyber Investment Fund, whose purpose is to enhance DoD's intelligence capabilities in support of warfighter cyberspace operations. The fund accomplishes this mission by providing seed money to defense intelligence organizations seeking to develop or enhance emerging cyberspace capabilities. In the coming months, we'll look at focus areas like network mapping, social media visualization and cyber sense making, and machine speed analytics and execution. Innovation seed funds like these exist across the Defense Department and the IC. They really can be powerful catalysts if applied to the right needs. So today our nation is faced with many challenges, but with every challenge comes great opportunity. We're standing in an exciting era for the intelligence community and for defense intelligence in the Defense Department. An era where the defense intelligence enterprise has the potential to become the most capable, yet transparent and open intelligence system the world has ever seen. Our success will come from sharing our challenges across the system by not really caring about who answers the question or solves the problem, but rather that it in fact gets solved fast enough to be relevant. So let me close here really by saying it's truly an honor to spend some time with all of you here. And again, to the students here, I really hope and look forward to having many of you become a part of our enterprise in the years to come. We really do need you and others like you from across the other universities and across your generation. So thanks for a chance to share a few brief thoughts with you from the Pentagon perspective on what has really been a terrific and thought-provoking day. Thank you.
So Marcel, you're not going to get off the stage without a couple of questions. That's the price for being here.
Happy to do it.
So first question. We've been talking a lot about open source data, openness, transparency. But from your perspective, what are the most worrisome CI concerns of using open source data, particularly against classified national priorities and military priorities?
Yeah, well, as you point out, Ellen, it really is a double-edged sword. Open source data can be a tremendously powerful tool if you just think, as we've talked about today, about the amazingly rich information that's available across social media. It's clear that having an ability to understand that information in real time can sometimes be more powerful than having to rely on clandestinely acquired information. Because so much of what the intelligence community has provided as a service for the president and decision makers over the decades has been decision support and being able to demystify the world. And social media and open source information really can help demystify the world in a much more real-time way than has ever been possible in the history of intelligence gathering. At the same time, as we saw with General Stewart's anecdote, information can get out there that is just factually wrong or is intentionally factually wrong. And that has a way of dangerously seeping into decision making. We really need to be cautious about that dynamic as well. So as we navigate our way through what is a little bit of an uncertain world about how to take advantage of the real power of information and insight in this arena, we do need to think about the counterintelligence implications and build into our analytic standards and our algorithms for analysis some ability to identify the potential risks and the downside.
Great, thanks Marcel. Sure. So given the extent of emerging threats, what can recent graduates expect to do to address the low or even negative growth in the community?
Well, it is true that we have had some rough budgets for the last few years, and it is resulted in an intelligence community and a Defense Department that has not been growing, has been shrinking, whether it's force structure in the U.S. military or the equivalent force structure in the intelligence community. I will say, by the way, as an aside, that the budget dynamics that we have faced over the last few years the corrosive impact of that has not so much been that budgets are flat or shrinking, it's that budgets have been uncertain, which really prevents the intelligence community and the Defense Department from making optimal choices about how to posture ourselves against some very challenging long-term threats. My hope, and I think the hope of most intelligence community leaders, is that as we go through the final weeks of a budget process and a dialogue between the executive branch and the Congress this fall on the current budget, the FY16 budget, and indeed, as we're just a few days away from the start of a new fiscal year, that we can begin to get to a place where we have agreement on what the overall budget should look like and have an ability to be a little bit more predictable in the years ahead. It's important to the national security to be able to have that predictability. But it's also important to thinking about the choices that many here will be making in the next couple of years about whether to join the intelligence community. Because I think once we can get to a place where we have some certainty, we will be able to have a more regularized human capital plan that allows for hiring the right skill sets over the right time frames in a disciplined way. That's kind of the management answer to the question, Ellen. More in the personal advice category, to those who are thinking about applying, I'd say don't let the perception that we're hiring less get you down. We are still hiring in lots of different places. As I mentioned, on the defense intelligence side of the intelligence community, there are 110,000 people in our workforce, military and civilian. So some folks have come up through a military pipeline, signing up for uniform service, and find themselves being routed into a huge diversity of disciplines that are relevant to intelligence. And they're able to have a career in uniform in the intelligence community. They're also able to have a career that starts out in uniform and moves into a civilian role. So they're really, despite the kind of perception that it's hard, there's no doubt it is hard. Frankly, it's always been hard to get a job in the IC given the barriers to entry that exist. But hard is not hopeless in this case. There's room for those who have the talent and the drive and the determination, and probably most importantly, the long-term view and the patience to have a role in the intelligence community. So don't give up, keep at it. If it's something you're interested in, we really do need that dedication. We need that excitement, that enthusiasm that you bring. And don't give up if you're thinking about a career in intelligence. It's just a matter of time before you can find the right fit.
So in the current world environment, there are no shortages of crises demanding urgent intelligence attention. But how does the IC, and specifically the defense intelligence components, balance short-term requirements while addressing long-term issues?
It's a really tough challenge, and there's no greater indicator of how tricky it is than just watching the calendars of someone like Director Cardillo and Secretary of Defense Ash Carter, Director Clapper, where you look at the struggle that ensues every week to start the week with a series of really well thought through days focused on big strategic decisions, long range issues, tough problems that need 3 or 4 hours on the calendar to be dealt with properly. And then every day you come in and essentially that calendar is thrown out because of the crisis of the moment. The article in the newspaper that indicates a management challenge or management crisis that's come up within your agency, or a world event that has taken a dramatic turn for the worse and requires a real focused attention for the day. That urgent will always crowd out the long term. The core question is, how do you ensure that it's the important that always dominates your attention? Sometimes it's the urgent and important. Sometimes it's the not urgent but still very important. And creating that balance is really one of the toughest tricks to get right as a manager and leader in government. But absolutely essential that we find a way to do both. The only other thing I'd say is, as I mentioned in my remarks about how we think about the mission, we really do constantly address every day, how do we apply the current capability that we have operationally to today and the problems that we're facing today, while at the same time evaluating where we've got gaps and missing capabilities and bring those capabilities online to be available to us in the future, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years down the road. And some of the challenges that we face that are urgent today, for example, thinking through how do we in Russia work our way through a very different relationship than we had a few years ago, really have some urgency for today, but they also have some very long-term aspects to them, and we've got to make sure we're carving out time to think about both sides of that problem set.
Okay, so I'm going to take advantage of being the master of ceremonies to ask my own question last.
Sure.
So the DNI has been the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, the position you've held, and then the DNI for, 10, 11 years. And clearly integration, eyesight, various personnel programs have been his passion, and he's driven us towards a far more integrated community. We've got roughly 18 months left in this administration and presumably in his time as the DNI. What would your advice be to him about the 2 or 3 things he could do to push some of these programs beyond their tipping point?
Well, my one piece of advice for Director Clapper would be to stay until January 20th, 2017, and then consider staying on after that. Director Clapper's 5 decades of intelligence community service are really unparalleled in the generations of people that he's mentored and the generations of leadership he's provided in literally building parts of our intelligence community. So he has brought to our leadership team that is in place today a depth and breadth and vision that is really unparalleled. And so my advice, kind of answering your question, Ellen, is I'm not really able to point to 2 or 3 things that he's not doing that should be done. He, I think in all of our view, has been doing exactly the right things with the rich depth that he's brought to bear. He's been able to implement them so very effectively. And so what we really have valued, I think, is the focus on over many years of service, particularly as USDI and then as DNI, being able to integrate this community, make sure that it's operationally relevant, and also think about where we head over the future. And that steady hand on the tiller is what I think we all so very much value. Would ask him to keep leading us as long as he's got the stamina to do so.
Okay. Well, Marcel, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Ellen. I appreciate it.
And so my last order of business here today is to invite Director Cardillo back to the stage. Thanks. Thank you.
So the only thing standing between you and a reception or a lovely experience out on a beautiful fall day. Let me start with thanks. Cloris Foundation, Bruce Hoffman, Ellen, all of the volunteers, all of the people that made sure that logistics were in the right place and that badges were made. Thank you all. You made this possible. To the industry, my industry colleagues that were able here to join us today. To the speakers, I won't name them all, but I will name 2 that rate me, Clapper and Lettra. Marcel might have even, oh good, thank you Marcel. So we're only a week away from the end of our performance period, so this is perfect timing to, seriously though, Marcel, I appreciate your time and obviously the DNI's time, which is extremely valuable. But last and not least, last and first are the students, academics that were able to join us here today in the auditorium and virtually. And the reason is because of what will now become a shameless plug. You've heard it often here today, but there may be some question in your mind about how you join this merry band. And at least from this seat, okay, I won't be very integrated right now, it is www.nga.mil, all right? And it brings you up on a page, okay? Kind of looks like that. And then you'll hit the Careers tab, okay? And then you got to kind of look after you hit the Careers tab. Go right, it'll say in this section down to Student Opportunities, okay? Once you get there, the gates open, all right? And so there's all different sorts of opportunities on that students page to include paid internships. Yep, I said paid internships. Now seriously, you should do it for free. But you don't have to at NGA, we pay. And really seriously, our internship window is open right now. So when you go to that homepage, it'll say it's there, I think, till the 10th of October, but don't wait till the last day. It's a lot of paperwork. You've heard many times today, persistence, okay, patience, all that. So get in early, and obviously there's places on that page to help you if you need it. To Marcel's point, yeah, budgets are flat and uncertain. We plan on hiring 600 people next year. It's not 0, it's not 6,000, but it's 600, and that's one agency. And so please don't be put off by the headlines, et cetera. In line with that comment, though, I'll finish with this. So why would you join our community? We relentlessly pursue the truth. We do so to serve our nation and its security above ourselves. That's not for everyone. We all have different callings. But if it is for you, please relentlessly pursue the application process. It isn't easy, but it is worth it. I'll finish where I started. For us at NGA, this is a really special opportunity. As you've heard today, we have good intentions about getting better at this transparency thing, but we don't have all the answers. And so I've learned a ton today just through your questions or comments or from my colleagues here on the breaks and at lunch. And so I'm very appreciative of what you've brought to the table here through this exchange. And we're also committed to continuing the conversation. And so we look forward to it in many forms and picking up some of the momentum that we've had today. So final thanks for everyone for attending, and a real big thanks, Bruce, to you and your team, Ellen, for your leadership here today to make today so successful. Thank you all very much.